So let's try and make sense of his rants. Joining me on India First, Ambassador Vivek Kajju, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, has been our ambassador to Afghanistan, has served extensively on the Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan desk in the Ministry of External Affairs. Lieutenant General Satish Dua is former Kashmir Corps Commander, also former Chief of the Integrated Defense Staff. Joining me from the United States is Dr. Max Abrahams, Associate Professor of Public Policy and Political Science at the Northeastern University, joins us from Boston. Also with me is my colleague and senior journalist, Sandeep Unnithan. Ambassador Kajju, US is our comprehensive strategic partner, but not a whisper from the US when Pakistan, using US soil, it resorts to this nuclear saber rattling against India. What does this indicate, sir?
Well, I would think that India should lodge a very strong diplomatic protest to the State Department for the remarks made by the Field Marshal and say that we expect that the State Department and the US administration will not only take note but will condemn these remarks. If the US still does not do it, then we must derive the correct lessons about the state of India-US relations and US-Pakistan relations at this stage. That is the first thing that is required to be done diplomatically. Munir was speaking to an audience of Pakistani expatriates. He spoke in a manner which was completely political, which is not surprising because Pakistani army is both a political and a professional force. And but it was bizarre because he he went into a realm which uh, a responsible army chief never does. In
Yes.
fact, in my memory, while Pakistan has often alluded to nuclear threats, but Pakistani army chiefs have been very careful in using their words. Munir obviously does not belong to that tradition. And we must take note of this. Uh, we can't ignore this because Munir at the moment is supreme in Pakistan. He
Yes.
is, uh, but at the same time, having said that he's supreme in Pakistan, he is ironically feeling insecure domestically because despite everything that he's done to Imran, Imran Khan has been in jail for over 2 years, but Imran still retains a measure of popularity in Punjab, and that is the province in Pakistan that matters. So I
You know what
think the
actually hurts at this stage is the fact that US, being a comprehensive strategic partner, has been completely silent. Last time Asim Munir ranted against India, it was followed up, Dr. Max Abrahams, by the Pahalgam terror attack. And the way we've seen US act or didn't act, what explains, in your view, the US silence when India, a comprehensive strategic partner, is threatened with a nuclear attack from US soil, Dr. Abrahams?
I really can't fully explain it. I'll just say that voted for Trump, and I'm also very pro-India and very pro-US-India relations. And during his presidential campaign, I very publicly said that I thought that US-India relations under a second Trump administration would improve. I
Yes.
thought this for a number of reasons, particularly because the Trump administration, at least rhetorically, really emphasizes the importance of containing China in the Pacific. And so it was my understanding that India and stronger US India relations was going to be a very important part of that containment strategy. But this hasn't played out the way I expected. There's a certain coldness to US India relations. and a surprising warmth between the US and Pakistan. You know, this is the story of the day, and it's an important one, but we could go back a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And I think that we're really looking at a trend where US India relations under this administration are simply not as strong as we all hoped and expected. And US Pakistani relations seem to be moving forward. But I can't pretend that I have all the answers to explain
Okay.
that because, frankly, I've been surprised by it and disappointed.
Indeed. In fact, we're all very disappointed. The manner in which this is panning out, I'm actually going to quote you what Trump said in his first term and how he's behaving in his second term. But General Dua, are you surprised by the rants of Asim Munir and the fact that it's happening in Tampa, Florida? I mean, how dare a military officer use US territory to threaten a democracy, and at a time when India and US are supposed to be such close strategic partners? Or does this actually prove, as many in India have argued over decades, that US, especially now under Donald Trump, is a very unreliable, comprehensive strategic partner?
Gaurav, the short answer to your question, that are you surprised that he said this? The short answer is no. But let me expand on that. Because uh, the Pakistan Army Chief is known to have made some baseless rants in the past. 4 days before the Pahalgam terror attack took place, the kind of speech that he made, he spoke about the two-nation theory, talking about religions. India is, Kashmir is our jugular vein. I mean, what baseless talk it was. But then it was followed up by a terrorist carnage in Pahalgam. And then we know what happened, Operation Sindoor followed. Now, I think why he's spoken from there is, on one hand, is his insecurities at home. Mr. Kaju brought that out very well. And on the other hand, I think he's emboldened by the growing warmth between US and Pakistan, and the fact that in the Trump administration, we are seeing some such kind of statements, facts, and attitudes coming out of the US as well. And it has emboldened him to speak the way he spoke. When you talk about India and US being strategic partnership relationship between us, and why Asim Munir, you should choose to speak from there. Don't forget that while US was searching for Osama bin Laden for 10 years, eventually he was
Yes.
found in Pakistan. So
Yes.
Pakistan is known to have that kind of dynamic, and I think they've really played the US very well, because despite whatever they do, they keep continuing to get support from the US. But uh, on one hand, while we should not take it lightly, what he said, on the other hand, the list of slew of measures that Mr. Kaju's listed out must be taken.
Okay.
India should be on its guard, but we must also understand that his insecurities stem. I'm going to end with this. His insecurities stem from the fact that we have called their nuclear bluff not once, not twice, but thrice. If you take the surgical strike, the Balakot strike, and the Operation Sindoor, and now
I
that's what he
completely
wants to
agree
sort
with
of
you.
reinforce.
I
Yes.
completely agree with you. But his insecurities are followed up by a terror attack. And Sandeep, US calling Pakistan a phenomenal partner in the war on terror is actually cringeworthy. Pakistan, as General Dua also very rightly pointed out, was shielding Osama bin Laden barely 100 meters from Pakistan Military Academy at Kakul in Abbottabad. So 9/11 terror, and Dr. Max Abrahams can correct me, close to 3,000 people lost their lives in America. Linked back to an Osama bin Laden found in Abbottabad. Look at Pakistan's double game in Afghanistan, where more than 2,700 American lives were lost over 20 years. Again, Pakistan stabbed US in the back. So that's Pakistan phenomenally stabbing US in the back, and US calling them a phenomenal partner. Just how myopic are the Americans, Sandeep?
Absolutely, Gaurav. There's no two ways about it. The Americans have been extremely myopic when it comes to having Pakistan as an ally, a so-called ally on the war on terror. Pakistan has been running with the, hares and hunting with the hounds, so to speak, in this war on terror. But, the thing about General Munir's statement, Gaurav, is that it's not an empty threat, because there are 8 nuclear armed countries in the world. And there is only one where the military directly controls nuclear weapons, and that is Pakistan. General Munir is the man with his finger on the nuclear button. And that is why the world must worry, including the United States. And let's not forget, Gaurav, that in this war on terror, you had this prospect of a Pakistani nuclear scientist who was talking to Al-Qaeda, Sultan Bashiruddin Mahmood, whose son today heads the DGISPR. Pakistan has been the world's #1 proliferator of nuclear weapons. Pakistani blueprints have been found as far as North Korea and Libya. They are nuclear arms traffickers. They are a global migraine. And that is the reason that the world must worry from this statement. It's not just directed at India, Gaurav. It is directed at the rest of the world. Who knows, with this kind of statements, the rhetoric, the rants that General Asim Munir has been making, he could possibly be signaling a return to the Pakistan of the 1990s and early 2000s, where it was one of the world's largest, it was a global migraine, Gaurav. The United States was doing business with them only because of this war on terror. And now it seems that Munir is emboldened by this, this pro-Pakistan tilt in the United States, which is why he's saying and doing what he is doing right now, Gaurav.
No, Ambassador Kaju, in that case, what should India's options be? Because let's get to the substance of what Asim Munir said. Apart from the nuke threat, he's talked about attacking India from the east, moving to the west. He's talked about attacking a top Indian industrialist. He's talking about taking half the world down. He's desperately raising the nuclear bogey after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and the entire government made it very clear India had exposed Pakistan's nuclear Rant bogey and carried out these attacks, as General Dua pointed out, 3 attacks exposing Pakistan's nuclear blackmail.
2 points here, Gaurav. The first is that obviously he wants to attract as much international attention as possible through these comments of his. The object is that the world should restrain India from undertaking any kinetic attack, even if there is a terrorist strike against us. That is clearly his objective. He will not succeed in his objective. I think our statement today was measured. I think it was carefully crafted, and it really cautioned the world about Pakistan's behavior, which really can't be forgiven, and also that India's will remain firm. That is the first point. The second point, I think, Gaurav, which we have not paid sufficient attention to, is that why is Asim Munir being lionized in uh, in the United States? And I use that word deliberately. Uh, the US president doesn't host a meal and have a 2-hour discussion over that meal with a visiting army chief. I mean, it's absolutely unprecedented, at least as far as South Asia is concerned. It's unprecedented. So the question we have to ask ourselves: why is he doing this? And for me, the reason lies in a statement that the US State Department issued on July 25th after the meeting between the US Secretary of State and the Pakistan Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ishaq Dar. In that statement, the State Department said that they were happy and grateful. I'm paraphrasing, that Pakistan was acting as a kind of a conduit for carrying messages from the US to Iran. I think we in India and our strategic experts have not paid sufficient attention to this. It reminded me, I've written an article on this in the
Yes.
newspapers in some detail. It reminded me of the kind of role that Pakistan had played in 1971 in assisting the United States to open up with China. And I must confess that I, for one, was taken totally aback by those few words in that authoritative statement after the Rubio Ishaqar meeting. So let us not forget that the US, despite everything, despite the bomb, the three areas, the three nuclear sites that they bombed, despite the US, the Israeli 12-day bombing of Iranian sites and other military facilities, the
Okay.
US continues to remain very worried about Iran, and they are using, at this stage, they are using the Pakistan
So,
uh,
Dr. Abrams,
to act as conduit.
okay. Okay, Dr. Abrams, Donald Trump in his first term on the 1st of January 2018 tweeted, the United States has foolishly given Pakistan more than $33 billion in aid over the past 15 years, and Pakistan has given America nothing but lies, deceit, thinking of our leaders as fools. Now, is that exactly what's happening in 2025? Pakistan continues to think American leadership are fools, and they think that Pakistan is a phenomenal partner in the war on terror when Pakistan is anything but that.
This is obviously a very different administration than the first Trump administration. And one of the big differences is that in Washington at this time, there's a lot of interest and enthusiasm in what's being called realism within international relations. And in realism, there's no importance attached to ideology. And so, even though India is a democracy, and even though Pakistan has dirty hands with respect to sponsoring Islamist extremism, that doesn't put Washington off because of their realist orientation.
Okay?
I think that that's one of the reasons to explain this warmth between Washington and Pakistan and the coldness between the US and India, even though we're both important democracies. You see the same thing in terms of the Trump administration's treatment of other countries like, say, Qatar or Turkey, where you might think because of their, they're being implicated in Islamist extremism and terrorism, that would weaken Washington's relations with them. But no, not under this administration. So there might be some sort of broader ideological, sort of international relations explanation for what's going on between the US and India and Pakistan. I think that we're seeing some evidence of that in these surprisingly strong relations as well between the US
So,
and Turkey and Qatar, etc.
let me bring in General Dua into this conversation, and how should India view this?
One sentence.
Okay, quickly. Yes, go on, Ambassador.
I think
Ambassador Kaju.
I would agree with my co-panelist, except to say that Washington is pursuing not realism, but short-sighted realism. And short-sighted realism is a sure recipe for a foreign policy and security disaster.
It indeed is. And given this situation, General Dua, should
Hey,
India
can I
also
just
keep
add one thing?
relationship?
I just
Go
want to
on.
add one thing, but that
Yes.
based on, realism, you could equally predict that US relations with India would get better in order to contain China. Realism is often indeterminate with respect to predictions. I'm a critic of realism myself. Go
No,
on.
but is realism the same as transactional relationship? Because if it's purely transactional, there is no investment in building up a very strong partnership. And this is what I want to understand from you. Should we be depending on America on military hardware, if I may? Because if America only believes in temporary transactional relationship. Tomorrow they may have good ties with Pakistan and not give us weapons or systems or spares that we require. So should we be investing in critical military equipment from the United States? General Dua, in your view?
I think India should and will do whatever is in our national interest. And at the moment, I don't think we are for whatever the foreign component that we have in importing weapons and platforms. I don't think we are putting all our eggs in one basket. So whether it is the US or any other country, I don't think it will be prudent to put your eggs in one basket. You should not be totally dependent on one partner, and that's what diversification has to be done and is being done. Especially with the US in the recent past, US has we've had very good defense relations. It's one of our biggest suppliers. We had several aircrafts. We have several other platforms from the US. Uh, but this little turbulence that we seem to be having now is a small issue. We will have to take a very long-sighted view of things like weapons and platforms for the defense of our country. And I think as an aspiring regional power, no our country cannot afford to afford to remain dependent on foreign manufacturers for long. And that is why we are giving a great push to Make in India. uh, Defense platforms, defense manufacturing and systems, it does take times the world over.
Okay.
Everyone knows it.
Yes.
So it's going to take a little while, but I think we have to rely more and more on our indigenous systems, which is growing in share, but we'll
The
have to
big
be
question
patient.
does remain, yes, we are going in for the PA ties, Sandeep, I believe, from the United States of America. Yes, US is promising that the GE 404 engines will be delivered now on time, even though they're 2 years late and those supply chain issues have been tackled. But somewhere down the line, has that, especially with Trump, and there are many who argue, and Ambassador Kaju do weigh in on this, that should we make this distinction between the Trump administration or Trump per se, the White House, the State Department, and the Pentagon, or does Trump call all the shots? But Sandeep, quickly, 1 minute to you and 1 minute to Ambassador.
Well,
Kaju.
absolutely, Gaurav. You know, the behavior of the President Trump in the last couple of months has really brought that shadow back over the Indo-US relationship, over the safety of the United States as a reliable supplier of military hardware. And we've seen that in Operation Sindoor, Gaurav, where the S-400 and the BrahMos missile, they were bought from Russia. And Operation Sindoor would not have been a success but for these two very critical systems. Now, while the US hardware is important, they have not been used in the way that Russian systems have. And Russia never attaches any strings to the kind of weapons that it sells to India, like the United States is known to have done in the past. So that is going to be literally the elephant in the room, Gaurav, when it comes to ties with the United States, including weapons purchases from the United States, Gaurav.
Ambassador Kaju, would you make a distinction between White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department when it comes to the Trump administration? And should we wait to ride out the storm before investing big in terms of military hardware from the United States of America and see who comes 4 years later?
Trump controls the United States politically almost completely. It's not only that he controls different branches of his administration, he has, let us not forget, won a majority of votes in the last election. His MAGA constituency remains very, very strong. He controls both houses, the Congress and the Senate. He has a 6-3 majority in the
Yes.
judiciary. I do not recall as powerful an American president as Trump. And let us not kid ourselves. We have to deal with this man for the next 3.5 years. Yes, my last point, it may well happen that he may be surprised by the next round of elections for the Senate and the Congress. But that will be very cold. That will be cold comfort to us
Yes.
because we have to deal with him with his maverick ways. The Pakistanis are massaging his ego, and he needs the Pakistanis in the Iranian context among other things. He also doesn't want Pakistan to be left to China altogether.
Yes.
We are instinctively, as a nation, we cannot massage anyone's ego. We've never done it. We never will. It's against our basic values that we inherited from the freedom struggle. We don't do this. We don't conduct our foreign
Okay.
policy in this manner. So we are a country of dignity. We are a country of self-respect, and we
Fair enough.
expect that our partners will show us the same. Unfortunately, the way Trump is conducting himself with us, it's a different matter. He's conducting himself similarly with many countries except China. The only
So that's
country
where
he is
perhaps we need to
differential
show
to is
with
China.
dignity, strength. I've run out of time on this part of the show. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me.